Imagine this. A national leader, he's imprisoned, facing years locked away, but instead of, despair, he turns inward. He starts writing
Mhm.
and pens this monumental work that literally shapes how his nation sees its own past, its culture, its very soul.
That's the incredible backstory for our deep dive today. We're looking at Jawaharlal Nehru's seminal work, The Discovery of India.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was written between 1942 and 46, while he was actually incarcerated by the British. So it's not just history, right? It's this profound journey into India's identity, fueled by amazing scholarship and, well, just this deep love for his homeland.
Absolutely. And our mission for you today is pretty clear. We've gone through a really detailed review of the book and we've pulled out the most compelling insights. Think of this as your shortcut, really, to grasping the core ideas of the discovery of India and why it still matters. Okay, so what can you expect? We're going to cover the big themes, obviously, and we'll get into Nehru's unique way of writing history. It's quite personal. We'll talk about its strengths, which are considerable, but also, yeah, maybe touch on some critical perspectives too. And crucially, we want to connect all these historical facts to those, aha moments, those surprising bits about why this book still feels so relevant. So let's start right there. When we say monumental, what is the actual scope of the discovery of India? I mean, it sounds incredibly ambitious.
Oh, it absolutely is. Fundamentally, the discovery of India is this huge intellectual exploration. It covers India's civilization, its history, its incredibly rich culture, its philosophical traditions, and the whole idea of what Indian identity even means.
Mm.
And for it to be written by its future first prime minister from prison, well, that just underscores his deep scholarship and, frankly, his passion for the country's heritage.
Right. And when you say huge, sweeping, how far back are we talking? How far does Nehru actually go? What are the main sort of intellectual threads he's pulling together across all that time?
Yeah. He covers a really astonishing amount of ground, both time and ideas. Nehru dives deep into India's cultural origins. He traces things right from the Indus Valley civilization, which is still quite enigmatic, really. Then through the Vedic period, the rise and fall of great empires, the emergence of different religions, all the way up to the British colonial era, and of course, the independence movement itself. But it's not just a timeline. He doesn't just list events. He very skillfully weaves together how India's sense of nationhood developed, its spiritual foundations, and the really complex struggle for self-rule. Like he examines how an ancient idea like dharma, cosmic law or duty, how that concept evolved. It went from maybe a more rigid social duty to this broader ethical framework that he argues subtly informed the nonviolent freedom struggle. That's quite a connection he makes.
That's fascinating. So it's not just a history book then. It sounds more like he's inviting you, the reader, onto his own journey of discovery. How does he pull that off? How does he make such a vast historical story feel, well, engaging and personal, not just like a textbook?
Yeah, definitely not a textbook. His approach is very immersive, reflective too. He doesn't just give you the facts, the dry data. He blends historical findings with really insightful cultural analysis. And he sprinkles in his own thoughts, personal anecdotes even. It creates this narrative that feels both incredibly thorough, but also somehow really accessible. You can feel his deep affection for India pouring out of the pages, but he's also clearly committed to intellectual honesty. He wrestles with the material. He admits when things are uncertain, which kind of draws you into his own thinking process.
Okay, so given that scope and that really unique style, what would you say are the book's biggest strengths? Why does it still hold up decades later? Why should someone listening today think about picking it up?
Well, its narrative power is just immense. That's a huge strength. Nehru's writing is just so compelling. It makes this massive historical story feel both enlightening and, like you said, deeply personal.
Mhm.
It offers genuinely invaluable perspectives on India's long, complex history, its amazing cultural diversity, and its deep philosophical roots. And what's really striking is how relevant it still feels. It really does. Nehru's passion for India's heritage, his commitment to nationalism, but also to socialism and democracy, it all just shines through. It makes it a source of, well, inspiration and understanding, even for today's challenges.
It sounds like a true classic.
Yeah.
But like any really significant work, the discovery of India must have its nuances, right? Are there areas where critics or maybe later historians might point out Nehru's own biases, or perhaps where our understanding now is a bit different?
Yes, absolutely. And that's fair. It is a deeply personal account written from a specific perspective and time. Some scholars might argue that maybe Nehru sometimes idealizes certain periods in ancient Indian history, or perhaps doesn't give as much weight to, say, the distinct regional histories outside the main northern centers. And yeah, while the writing is beautiful, it is long, It can be quite dense and academic in places, which could be a bit daunting for some readers. But, acknowledging these points doesn't really take away from the book's overall value. If anything, it helps us appreciate Nehru's own intellectual project even more, seeing it as his profound personal synthesis, not the final word on history.
That makes sense. And it brings up a really important point, especially thinking about today's world. Identity, nationalism. How does this book actually shape our understanding of Indian nationalism? It's such a complex idea, especially in a place as diverse as India.
It's a very sophisticated exploration, actually,
No.
quite thought-provoking. Nehru really grappled with that central challenge. How do you build a unified national identity in a country with such incredible diversity? Languages, religions, regions. His answer wasn't to try and flatten that diversity, quite the opposite. He saw that pluralism as India's fundamental strength, which was pretty radical thinking for a new nation seeking unity.
Hmm.
So his whole discussion of nationalism is deeply intertwined with his commitment to democracy, to socialism, and critically, to secularism. And that vision, that kind of inclusive nationalism he laid out, well, it remains incredibly relevant today, doesn't it?
It really does. So, connecting all this then, zooming out a bit, why does this book still matter so much today, beyond just being a historical document? And what does it really tell us about Nehru, the man, the thinker?
Well, its significance today is, I think, profound because it keeps offering these essential perspectives on India's identity, its nationalism, issues that are constantly being debated and reevaluated. It inspires and educates. It gives you these incredible insights into the country's past, its present, and maybe even hints about its future, all through exploring that heritage, the history, the philosophy. And as for Nehru himself, oh, the book is like a window into his mind. You see his intense intellectual curiosity, his real passion for learning, his deep commitment to nationalism and socialism, yes, but also that profound pride and, well, love for India. And it also shows his intellectual honesty, his broad humanism. You even get glimpses of his appreciation for nature, art, literature, and just the sheer amazing diversity of India.
So, after this whole deep dive, thinking about the book and its context, what would you say has been its overall lasting impact?
Its impact has been, well, genuinely profound. It's resonated so deeply with generations of readers, general readers and scholars alike. It's been widely praised, obviously, for that engaging narrative, the historical insights. And its status as a classic is undeniable. It really continues to inspire and educate anyone interested in India's endlessly fascinating story and its incredibly rich culture.
So, the discovery of India, it really is this unique window into a nation's soul, isn't it? Crafted by one of its key architects under the most difficult circumstances. It's just such a powerful testament to reflection, to curiosity, and to believing in a national idea.
Exactly. And maybe that leaves us with a thought for you, the listener. As you think about this incredible book, Born from Adversity, consider this. How often does that kind of intense pressure, that confinement even, become the very thing that sparks monumental insight? What can that sort of forced, deep personal dive, that introspection under duress, truly reveal? And how does that kind of personal revelation then manage to become something bigger, a cornerstone for how an entire nation understands itself and shapes its future? It's